Thank you for listening to this episode of the Feldencast. I'm your host, Ethan Cowan. Hi, dear listeners. Welcome to episode 9 of the Feldencast, Circles on the 7 C's. The 7 C's being the 7 cervical vertebrae. Such a dork. But it's fitting that there's kind of a pirate, adventure vibe to the title, because you're going to hear some wind at the beginning of this lesson. I record these lessons in my car, or at least I have been until recently. That was the easiest space to control the sound, or so I thought. And then I was recording, it was very windy. So you're going to hear some of that. And then later in the lesson, you'll also hear some kids playing in the courtyard outside the apartment where I live in Boulder, Colorado. But I should say something about the lesson. This one is, it's an adventure. Some very challenging movements in this lesson. So please take it easy on yourself. There's no need to be heroic. Unless you're starring in your own adventure where you need to be heroic. But I'd say there's also a healthy dose of ambiguity in this lesson. There may be points where you feel like you're not quite sure how to enact the instructions, and in those moments, just don't worry. Have fun with it. You don't need to get it right. It's an adventure. Just see what happens. So, if you're ready to go, then here it is. This is episode 9, Circles on the 7 C's. It's based on AY6. Please begin by simply lying on your back. I'm going to talk you through a slow scan of some of the different parts of your spine. So bring your attention down to your tailbone. So it's way down there, near the floor, near your anus. The middle of the pelvis, between the right and the left. And now, slowly, start to move your attention a little bit up in the direction of the lower back so you can feel the shape of the pelvis. And how the pelvis is resting on the floor. And as your attention moves toward the lower back, you'll eventually arrive at the lowest part of the spine, which they call the 5th lumbar vertebra. I guess they're always counting from the head down. They call this lower part of the spine the lumbar spine. And there are 5 bones that make up this lower part of the spine. So now again, move your attention very slowly up this little section of the spine. Just feel there's kind of a curve. The lumbar spine is held a little bit away from the floor. And it doesn't necessarily need to be anatomically accurate. You just feel if you're going slowly, you could kind of go bone by bone up the spine. From the bottom, you can touch each of the vertebrae with your attention. Or if you're not sure about the specifics, you could touch each vertebra with your imagination. And now eventually, if you move up a little bit more, you end up at the first, well, no, they call it the 12th thoracic vertebra. The thoracic part of the spine is the middle part. It's basically all the bones of the spine that are connected to the ribs. And this section of the spine, compared to the lumbar spine, is curving in the other direction, toward the floor. So now you're just slowly moving your attention up the thoracic spine, the direction of the neck, but just go slowly. So you can either feel or you can imagine that you're going bone by bone. Some parts of it are going to be a lot easier to feel than other parts. Some parts of the thoracic spine are very clearly touching the floor. But then most people have some sections of the spine that are really difficult to feel. Don't worry, if that's you. Just go very slowly. You can imagine the spine, and you just let the image of the spine develop slowly. Then eventually you'll get to the neck. The neck, the base of the neck, is called C7, cervical vertebra number 7. And the neck, again, kind of curves away from the floor. It's kind of like a reflection or an echo of the lumbar spine. So just feel slowly the 7 cervical vertebrae. Just moving your attention in the direction of the head. And when you get up to C2 and C1 at the top of the neck, C2 is called the axis because there are certain kinds of rotation that are possible there. And then C1 at the very top is called the atlas, like the character carrying the globe of your head. But of course, right now your head is just resting on the floor as much as you can let it. And now do a very slow, very small movement, simply rolling your head just a little to the right and then back to the middle. And then rolling the head just a little to the left, then back to the middle. And you can simply roll your head back and forth a few times. Now, how is that in the 7 cervical vertebrae? Is the rolling of the head distributed equally among the 7 bones in the neck? Are there any parts of the neck where it feels like dull or dampened? The left side of the neck feel the same as the right, or is there any asymmetry? And now, as you're rolling the head this small amount to the right and to the left, do you feel the rolling of the head anywhere in the spine below the neck? Can you feel the rolling of the head anywhere in the thoracic spine? The chest, the ribs? Some might even feel it down into the lumbar spine, the pelvis. Or imagine that they do. Okay, now roll yourself to one side and come up to sitting. Okay, now just arrange the legs with the soles of the feet together, if that's comfortable. If that's not comfortable, then cross the legs. Okay, good. Now, sitting up, just feel the 7 cervical vertebrae of the neck. And you don't need to do anything with them other than observe them, feel them. And now imagine that there's a pencil and it's coming out of the top of your head. Kind of like a continuation of your neck and the rest of your spine. So there's a pencil coming out of the top of your head and it's pointing in a direction that's more or less in line with the bones of the spine in general. And now imagine that there's a piece of paper right at the tip of that pencil. And now slowly start to draw a circle on this piece of paper with this imaginary pencil that's coming out of the top of your head. So let's say the paper is mounted on cardboard, so it's a stiff surface, and that surface is parallel to the ceiling. So that means the pencil is drawing a circle on an imaginary flat surface that's parallel to the ceiling. And it's not important if this circle is big, but it should be a circular circle. Which means that you might need to go very slowly if you want to be sure that the circle is actually circular. For most people at the beginning, there are all these asymmetrical contractions in the muscles around the spine. Make it really hard to make a circular circle. The circle might have edges, might have angles, squiggles. You just feel where you have to soften the muscles around the neck so that all 7 cervical vertebrae can help this be a circle. Good. Now just change the direction of the circle that you're making. You do not need to make the circle quickly. You're just thinking about the point, the imaginary pencil. It's touching every single point on the circle that you're drawing on this imaginary paper. And it's possible that the 7 vertebrae of the neck can all participate. But you have to go slowly enough so you can feel how to reorganize the muscles around the bones so all the bones could participate in this circle. Good, now let it go. And just roll into your back and rest for a moment on the back. Okay, now bring yourself back up to sitting. And again, you sit symmetrically with the soles of the feet together if it's comfortable. Or else you have the legs crossed if that's more comfortable. Good. Now with your right index finger, just touch the point of the top of the head where you imagined that the pencil was coming out of your head. So you just feel now the right index finger is touching the point at the top of the head. And that's that point that's kind of a continuation of the spine if it kept going up. And now with the finger stuck to that point like it's glued there, just make the same circle that you were just making with the head. So now the head and the neck are moving such that they carry the right index finger in a circle in space. So the finger and the arm are not moving on their own, but they're being moved by the circles of the head and moved by the neck. Okay, now switch hands. So bring your right arm down, then bring your left index finger to the same point at the top of the head. And now make circles in the opposite direction from the ones you were making. So again, the left index finger is touching the head at the very top. It's kind of stuck there. You're moving the head in small, easy circles that also move the finger. Also move the hand and the arm. Still going slowly enough that you're making a round circle. So all the muscles close to the spine and the neck need to be soft enough to make accurate round shapes. Good, and then just bring your arm down. Rest for a moment in sitting. Good. Now with your left hand, same hand you were just using, reach over the top of your head so that the left index finger now touches the right temple. So the left arm is over the top of the head and the left index finger is touching kind of in between the right eye and the right ear. So now just leave your head totally still, but move your left hand and arm so that you draw a circle around the circumference of your head using the left index finger. You could go all the way around the head with the left index finger 4 or 5 times. And the point is that you touch every single point on a line that goes around the circumference of your head. It's like there's a ribbon tied around your head, and you go slowly enough so that you actually touch every single point on that circumference. And now again, put the left index finger in the right temple. And now leave your index finger still in this exact position. And just start to move your head. Move your head so that you touch every point on that same circumference to the stationary left index finger. So the head is moving around the finger. And your head is touching the finger the whole time. If your head and your finger aren't touching, you're doing a different movement. So your left index finger stays in exactly one position in space. And then it's the head that's moving. The neck and the spine are bending in many, many directions, with the head to move around the finger, staying in contact. If you're not very careful, you might find that you're actually moving your left arm a little bit. Either moving it with the head moving or moving it instead of the head moving. So how can you keep the left arm still, left index finger in one position, so the head moves around the finger? Always touching the finger along a continuous line that's the circumference of the head. Good, now bring your left arm down. And bring your right arm over the top so that the right index finger can touch the left temple. And now leave the head still, and a few times just move the right index finger all the way around the head, so you're drawing a line around the circumference of the head. So your head doesn't move at all, the head just stays still. And the right index finger travels all the way around the globe of the head along the circumference. Maybe 3 or 4 times, partly to establish a feeling of where that line is so you'll be able to keep track of that line when you start moving the head instead of the finger. Now put the right index finger back on the left temple. And now fix the right hand in space. Means the right arm isn't going to move, the right hand isn't going to move. And then start to move your head all the way around your right index finger. The right index finger will touch every point on the line, the circumference around the head, but it won't move. And you can imagine, you can feel all the bones in the neck that need to move in order to make that possible. A lot of times you have unconscious muscular contraction in the neck, and it makes certain parts of the circumference really challenging to feel or to touch easily. And some parts of the movement are very accessible. Then other parts get like sticky, hard. Maybe you want to skip over them. So wherever the circumference gets challenging to trace, just go very, very slowly. Those are the most important parts so you can learn something about yourself, the parts that you want to skip. Okay, good. Now leave it alone. And again, just roll down onto your back and just rest for a moment on the back. Very good. Now, lying on your back, bend your knees, put your feet standing on the floor. And then interlace your fingers, bring them behind your head. And now picture that there's a piece of paper in front of your face, in between you and the ceiling. And it's mounted on a piece of cardboard that's parallel to the ceiling. And you've got a pencil that's sticking out of the top of your head. It's a continuation of the line of your spine. And now using your two arms, simply pick up your head and draw a circle on this piece of paper. And again, the circles that you're drawing, they don't need to be big, don't need to be drawn quickly. You can draw small circles slowly. Using your neck and your arms can direct the movements of the circles. So now it's not only the neck that's moving, but also parts of the thoracic spine and the ribs are helping to draw those circles. Good. Now just set the head down, take a little break, but leave the arms there. Now again, lift the head. Draw a circle now going in the other direction. So it's actually a number of circles, almost the same circle over and over, except that you're tracing it and you're trying to correct it so that it gets a little bit more circular each time you go around. And the point is that you feel all the different places you have to relax and reorganize if you're going to make this circle circular. Whether that means the neck, the arms, something in the face, shoulders, the chest. See if the breathing can be a little bit easier. Okay, set the head down and bring your arms down along your sides. Lengthen both your legs. Just rest on your back for a moment. Okay, roll yourself over onto your front side. And to start with, you have your arms up around your head. You put your forehead on the floor. And then put the right arm so that the right index finger is touching the back of the head, right in the middle. so that the right elbow is still on the floor. The right index finger is touching right in the middle of the back of the head. And now you'll keep the right index finger exactly where it is in space. Keep the right elbow on the floor. And then move the head. So you trace the circumference. So you move the head all the way around the stationary right index finger. A number of times you go slowly enough so you feel that the finger touches every single point along this line around the head. And because the right elbow is resting on the floor, you can be pretty sure that you're not moving the right arm, the right hand. So the right index finger doesn't get any farther away from the floor, it doesn't get any closer to the floor. And the head comes away from the floor and around the finger. Then around and back toward the floor, and it just sneaks right in between the finger and the floor. But what are all the muscles that you have to reorganize, relax to make this possible to do smoothly? Muscles around the spine and the neck. Muscles around the spine lower down. Great, now just pause for a moment so you can put everything down. Rest comfortably on the front so you can turn your head in either direction, whatever's comfortable. And then again, bring the forehead to the floor. And you bring the same right index finger to the middle of the back of the head again. And now just try to remember, what direction were you going before? Which side of the head did you touch first with the finger? What did it feel like? And once you're clear about that, then go in the other direction. Do the circumference the other way. It doesn't matter how many times you go around. You don't even have to make it around once. You go so slowly, you don't even do one. It's much more important to feel that there's a continuity of contact. It's like you're really there. You're aware of the finger touching each point on the circumference. And the face, interestingly, will stay facing the floor the entire time. In other words, there's not much rotation in the neck. It's more about taking the head forward and backward, and also side bending, which means very specific movements through the bones, muscles in the neck. So how exactly do you coordinate that? Okay, again, leave that. Just pause, rest on the front in any position that's comfortable. Good, now one more time, put your forehead on the floor. And now bring your left index finger to the back of your head, same spot, right in the middle. So you trace the circumference starting on the same side first, the left index finger now. And the left elbow is on the floor, so you can be pretty sure that the left arm, left hand aren't really moving. The left index finger stays the exact same height away from the floor, and you're moving your head all the way around the finger. So every single point on the circumference touches the finger. Okay, change the direction you're going. Okay, very good. Now, leave it alone. Roll yourself onto your back. Simply rest on your back now for a minute. Again, scan your neck. Try to feel or imagine the 7 bones of the neck. This lesson is largely dependent on your idea of what you're doing. I'm trying to give clear images and movements to try, but it's really interesting. You're the one that has to keep refreshing the image of what you're doing for yourself. Like you're the authority. Like if you keep the image in mind, you stay attentive, the contact of the circumference of the head with the finger staying in a certain point in space, it makes it possible you can observe a lot of interesting stuff in your neck, elsewhere, and then it's possible you could have fun kind of figuring out how to reorganize the action to better suit the idea of what you're doing. And on the other hand, if you just go on autopilot, you just do the movement kind of repetitiously, you could do this movement for hours. You could do this movement all day, and maybe you wouldn't get much out of it. So just check in with yourself. How's this going so far? Pretty clear about what you're doing, what the idea is? You feel like what you're doing is worth your while? You're enjoying it? Okay, now bring yourself up onto your elbows. There's a way you can prop yourself up. So the elbows, the forearms, the palms on the floor, a little behind you. And the legs are just long. And feel where the head wants to settle spontaneously when you're propped up like this. Where you're facing, where the horizon is. If the top of the head is pointed toward the ceiling or where. And now actually be ready to change your starting point of the head. Because what you're going to do is you're going to imagine there's a pendulum that's hanging down from the ceiling. So it's a long string with a weight at the end of it, maybe like a little iron ball. And you're going to imagine that that ball is hanging in a place where you could touch it with your forehead, right in the middle of the forehead. And then you'll move your head around the pendulum without disturbing it. And because it's going to swing very easily, if you bump it, you're going to want to move all around it without losing contact with it as well. So actually, just rest on your back again for a second. Let me just explain what you're going to do before you do it. Okay, so now you're just resting on your back, and I'm going to describe this again. So there's going to be a pendulum. Well, first of all, you're going to be posted up on your elbows, and there's going to be an imaginary pendulum, so a long string hanging down from the ceiling with a little iron ball at the end of the string. And that's going to be placed such that it starts right in the middle of your forehead, making contact with your forehead in your imagination. And you know, a pendulum will swing if it's disturbed, so the center of your forehead is going to be touching the pendulum, not disturbing it. And then you're going to move your head all the way around this imaginary pendulum in contact, but not disturbing it. So the thing is, if you start with the head too far forward, you're going to run out of room to go farther forward. So you're going to need to start with the head in a certain place, and also the imaginary pendulum in a certain place, so that you can actually go around the whole thing comfortably. Okay, so again, come up onto your elbows. And now make a prediction where you're going to have to put your head and where you're going to have to put this imaginary pendulum so that you'll be able to circle all the way around it with your head, circumference touching. And once you think you got a good starting spot, just start to do the movement. So again, the head is moving all the way around this imaginary pendulum hanging from the ceiling, and it's not disturbing. It's not starting the string swinging. But it is in contact with the pendulum all the way around the circumference of the head. And you know, if you need to adjust, if your prediction was a little bit off, you need to move the pendulum in your imagination, just continue adjusting this so that it becomes more and more possible to do it smoothly. But you're clear once you've got this spot where the pendulum is, that spot stays the same. That spot doesn't really move. And you try to take the head all the way around that spot. And now you're posted up on the arms, the elbows, so just notice the shoulders probably aren't really moving very much, right? So how does the spine, how does the neck and the thoracic spine need to move separately from the shoulders? You're just pointing out the difference to yourself between the bones of the spine and the bones of the shoulders. Now rest if you need to, but if you don't need to, then just change the direction you're going. But if you want to rest, rest. You can just change the direction later. But if you're still going, just remember you don't want to be moving very quickly, because if you lose contact with that little iron ball at the end of the string that it's swinging, it's going to be bouncing on and off your head. Okay, that's definitely enough. So now leave it alone, roll yourself down onto your back, and again rest for a moment. Now again come up onto the elbows. So both elbows, forearms, hands, all on the floor supporting you. But you could put them in the best, most comfortable arrangement. So you figure out if it's more comfortable to have the hands underneath the lower back, or if it's more comfortable to have the hands out to the sides, or forearms in line with the legs. If you're spontaneously kind of leaning more on one forearm than the other. Good. Now shift your weight all the way over onto the left forearm, left elbow, so that you could lift your right arm up into the air. And then you bring your right arm over the top of the head so you can put your right index finger on the left temple. And now you might want to change the orientation of the left elbow, left forearm, so that you're resting on the left elbow more comfortably. You could just pivot on the left elbow to where the arm and the shoulder are most comfortable. And now leave the right arm, the right index finger stationary in space. And now move the head all the way around the right index finger along that circumference. Depending on your muscular organization, on the neck, shoulders, the ribs, lower parts of the spine, is potentially challenging to go very far forward. So you might find yourself moving your arm and your hand instead of moving the head to complete the circumference, but try not to move your hand. Try to go very slowly so that you could feel how you might be able to move the neck and the spine differently. That's what this lesson is about. It's not really about moving the hand and the arm. And then change the direction of going around the finger. The right finger and the right arm are stationary, and the left elbow is on the floor, also not moving. And the head and the spine are moving between the two stationary arms. Okay, again, leave that and rest on the back for 30 seconds. Okay, post up again on both elbows. And then shift yourself over onto the right elbow, right forearm, right hand, so that you can bring your left arm up into the air and then over the top of the head and touch the right temple with the left index finger. Okay, now leave the left index finger in this exact position and just start to move the head around the finger. So go very slowly from the beginning without skipping over any of the hard parts. You might not even get all the way around. Maybe that's better. It's better to feel how to reorganize the movement than to achieve the movement. It's better to improve the movement than to finish it. And now change the direction that you're going. Good, now leave it alone and rest on your back for another minute. I really hope that you got the idea, the idea of what you're doing. It's a very specific idea. If you don't have the idea, if you can't quite picture what you're doing, or imagine what you're doing while you're doing it, then you could be going around and around for a long time, potentially, and not really get that much benefit. In other words, the benefit comes from having a really clear sense of what you're trying to do. And then there's this funny thing that happens, really more of a feeling. You inhibit your willpower enough so that you can feel how to improve your attempts, so you can get close to the idea, but without feeling compelled to just get the movement over with or complete the movement. So in this case, the idea is that the finger stays in one spot in space. And then the neck and the thoracic spine and the lumbar spine maybe, and all the muscles, all the bones, everything, including the self-image, everything reorganizes bit by bit so you can move your head all the way around in a smooth, uniform way, all the way around that point in space that's occupied by the finger. And if you're going to get really clear about that being accurate, then there are going to be all these little mistakes that you're going to make. And hopefully with the right attitude, you can have a little bit of fun. First you just perceive the mistakes, and then you could just try out these little improvements, very incremental improvements. It's not like you get it correct right away. All these little improvements or adjustments, these little moments where you're fine-tuning your map of yourself, your image, your self-image, so you can actually do what you intend with yourself. So now roll yourself onto your right side. And on the right side, you just lie down so that the legs are bent, both at the hips and the knees, so you're comfortable on your right side. And your right arm is long, so you have the right arm underneath your head, you're resting on it. And the left arm, you just put wherever it's comfortable to have it. It could be along the side, could be in front of you on the floor. The left palm can rest wherever. It doesn't matter where, as long as it's comfortable. Now bend your right elbow and bend your right wrist so that your right index finger is up in the air to the left of your head. And now lift your head so that you connect the left temple with the right index finger. So now in this position on your side, the head lifted, touching the finger, now move your head around the stationary right index finger. So the right elbow is on the floor, and the right index finger is in a very specific spatial position. And you're moving the head around the finger, always in contact with the finger, not moving the finger. Okay, now just lower the head and pause long enough so you feel refreshed. And whenever you feel ready to start up again, bring the head up and start going around the finger the other direction. Okay, that's fine. Now set the head down, lengthen the right arm. Just rest for a moment on your right side. And now imagine there's a pencil coming out of the top of your head in the continuation of the line of your spine. And again, bring back that imaginary piece of paper mounted on an imaginary piece of cardboard. It's parallel to the ceiling. And now it's over to the left of you. And now lift your head up and draw a series of circles on that imaginary piece of paper. Is there anywhere in your back that you could relax a little bit? Or anywhere else that you could relax? Now change the direction of the circles that you're drawing. Good, leave it alone and roll onto your left side. So now the left arm is long underneath the head. So now you're resting your head on the left arm. And now bend the left arm. Bend it at the elbow and the wrist so the left index finger is in the air to the right of your head. And then you lift the head so that the right temple kind of connects with the left index finger. And then you move the head so it moves around the stationary left index finger. Always in contact with the finger, but not moving the left index finger. And if you can, you stay facing forward. So you're not turning the head. Good, now change the direction that you're moving around the finger. And it's like there's this ongoing opportunity to go slowly enough so that you feel whether or not the finger is actually stationary. All 7 of the cervical vertebrae are more or less available depending on how you're organizing the neck. Okay, great. Now lengthen the left arm. Just rest the head on the left arm. And imagine the pencil emerging from the top of the head. You know those statues of the Buddha where he has that kind of bulbous thing emerging from the top of his head? And you'd think that it was hair, like a man bun, but it's actually like an enlightenment bun. But you have a pencil, imaginary. And now lift your head so you could use your imaginary pencil to draw some circles on a piece of cardboard paper or to the right between you and the ceiling. And not that you're necessarily anything like me, but the right side of my neck is pretty different than the left side. I have to go very, very slowly with this one, especially if we're going to get anywhere close to making a circular shape. And now change the direction of the circles. Okay, that's fine. Leave it alone, and again, roll onto your back. Now, one last time, you prop yourself up on your elbows. And you just imagine there's a pendulum hanging down from the ceiling, the plumb line, and you position your head and the imaginary pendulum so you'll be able to start with it right in the middle of your forehead, and you'll move around the pendulum so it's not too far forward, not too far back. And then once you've got that, without disturbing this pendulum, start to move your head around the pendulum. And now simultaneously, as you're doing this, imagine there's a pencil coming out of the top of your head. Now, what shape would this pencil be drawing as you move around the pendulum? So you're trying to hold these two imaginary objects somehow in your imagination at the same time as you're moving your head. And the head moves the pencil and the head doesn't move the pendulum. Okay, change the direction. You just go so slow that you're very sure that the pendulum is making contact with your head, but you're not moving it. And that way you're sure that you're drawing a very specific shape with no interruption. And the shape you're drawing is a projection of your head circumference. Okay, now bring yourself up to sitting. So you can sit now with the 2 feet, the two soles of the feet together if that's comfortable. Or cross the legs if that's more comfortable. And now just put your 2 hands on your hips. So the elbows are pointed out to the sides. And then go back to the first movement you did. So there's the imaginary pencil coming out of the top of the head. And then draw circles with that pencil. Good, and then draw a few circles in the other direction. And then take your hands off your hips, just put them wherever you want. On your legs, on the floor, wherever. And just continue with the circles. And now just feel when you move your head and your neck in circles like this, what are the other parts of your spine doing? What's happening in the thoracic spine? What's happening in the lumbar spine? Make the circles a little bit faster now, a little less carefully. And you let all the other parts of the spine just do what they will. How does that feel? What circles do the other parts of the spine make? And then change the direction that you're making the circles. Again, you're going a little carelessly now, a little faster. Not big necessarily. You feel that the entire spine now does a very interesting set of movements. Make a circle with the head if you let it. Okay, now leave it, and one last time you roll onto your back. And now while you're resting on your back, just feel the shapes of your spine. Do a scan like we did at the beginning. Go in the other direction now. So just feel, where does the head actually connect to the spine? And then the shape of the cervical spine now. 7 bones in the neck. And then try to feel some of the thoracic spine vertebrae that are connected to the ribs. So you're just moving your attention down your spine slowly. You just feel, does the spine seem any different to you now than it did at the beginning? Does it feel the same? And as you go down further, very slowly, eventually you get to the lumbar spine. You see what you feel now about how the lumbar spine curves a little away from the floor. And you just go slowly, kind of bone by bone, feel the 5 lumbar vertebrae. And you get down to the pelvis. You feel how the pelvis is resting on the floor. And then the sacrum in the middle between the right side of the pelvis, the left side. The sacrum goes down until it kind of culminates in the tailbone. Okay, and when you're ready, just bend your knees, and then you roll to one side. And you bring yourself up to sitting and eventually up to standing. Good. Now, in standing, you just take a moment to feel the 3 different sections of the spine, 3 curves: the lumbar spine, thoracic spine, cervical spine, and how the head is carried on top of the atlas, C1. And if you go down to the bottom of the spine, feel or imagine that there's an interface with some joints where L5 meets the pelvis. And the pelvis is standing on top of the 2 legs. Okay, and now see how those images change when you start walking. Thanks again for listening to this episode of the Feldencast. If you'd like to reach out and say hello, please do. You can email me at ethan@feldencast.com. I offer the Feldencast in a spirit of transparent generosity. If you have enjoyed your experience, and if you want to give back, please check out the Patreon page. It's patreon.com/Feldencast. Right now, this podcast is just a baby. We have, on average, 10, 12 listeners per episode. So if you'd like to help the Feldencast grow, please share this episode or any other episode that you've enjoyed, especially with family and friends. Thanks again for listening. I'm really enjoying this project, and I hope you are too.